There's a lot of them running, Tom.
Are there?
That is true.
Debbie, do you know if Debbie's going to be here?
You ready, Mr. Walker?
Yes, sir.
I'll call the meeting to order. We'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Alsop.
Here.
Kirkshank.
Here.
Heupel.
Here.
Shield.
Here.
Musgrave. Rankin.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
Mr. President, if I can note, Pro Tem Musgrave did contact the office today and stated she would not be able to be here for family emergency and requested to be excused.
I make a motion to excuse Ms. Musgrave.
Support. Motion support. Roll call.
Kirkshank.
Yes.
Heupel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried. Consent agenda. All items listed under consent agenda are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the village council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after consent agenda approval in its normal sequence on the regular agenda.
I'd like to pull number 5 down into new business.
And we'll number 6, we'll handle number 6 in new business?
Well, it says if discussion is desired, that item be removed from the consent agenda and discussed separately immediately after consent agenda
All
approval.
right.
I guess
we'll do it right after that then.
Okay.
Okay.
Make the motion so that we approve the agenda as amended.
Support. Motion support. Roll call vote, please.
Heupel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
Yes.
Kirkshank.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Item 5 from consent agenda, consideration of the approval of resolution 2018-24 to amend resolution 2017-34, which asks for a charter amendment to the procedure that determines council compensation.
I can take this one. So this is something that we've been working on for a little bit. Charter and ordinance had approved it to go on the ballot for the voters to approve for council to amend their compensation, which has been stuck at $900 for since 1987.
20 years or so,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think so.
30 years?
In the 80s at
40
least,
years?
I know that. It's 84, 87. But so this is just to discuss the amendment that was brought down from the Attorney General's office. Is that what it is? So it seems like it's a little contradictory to me because I want to put in here the further any changes in compensation will go into effect when the term of office of the office holder ends. End of sentence. But the amended now will be it will go into effect not less than 2 years after passing the resolution. So if we have a vote by the council on the first year of a member, the compensation won't happen until they leave the office. So potentially 3 to 4 years later. And then, but also it says right here that it has to go into effect not less than 2 years after it's enacted. So it seems like a conflict unless I'm reading it incorrectly.
Mr. McKinney, if I could.
Yes, Mr. Gildner.
So, you have before you 2 resolutions. If you'll turn first to resolution 2017-34, that's the one that talks about 2 years after the passing of the resolution. That's what was originally prepared and originally adopted by council. When it was sent to the AG's office, they expressed some concerns with that, that may enable council to change compensation during a term of office. So if you look at the more updated resolution, 18-24, that talks about when the term of the office holder ends. That's what you're being asked to adopt here tonight. That change comes directly from the Attorney General's office. My understanding is they will not approve the previous resolution language. They will the 2018 resolution.
Okay, so the suggestion in the original letter is not a suggestion. They're saying we won't approve it unless it's this way. So
Right.
that means, right, so if I take it at that value, then there will be different levels of compensation depending on the seat. So if you elect it, and then you have to wait till that office ends, and then new person comes in with new compensation, they may have the new compensation, and the other members are still at said amount.
That is a possibility.
Okay, I don't like that.
I'm not a fan.
No.
Me neither.
Because then seat A gets whatever the amount, let's just say $1,000, and then seat B is still at $900 or something like that. I don't
Right.
think that that's
In
appropriate.
practice, I don't see that happening, but, I mean, is it a possibility? Sure, it's a possibility. What I would anticipate is that council would say, you know, all council members are going to get $1,000 per annum. That simply would not take effect until the term of office for each of you ends. Anything else, anything other than that, could be perceived as a change in compensation during your term of office, and I don't think we're going to get AG approval for that.
Okay, but which term are we talking about? Because we have three.
They're offset.
We
yeah.
have three terms every 2
So
years.
three
So
sets are going to get the raise
if-
and three are not. And
if
then
we were to, if this resolution were in effect, and I'm on the board, and I don't get reelected in November, do 3 seats get the updated rate, but the 3 seats that didn't get reelected?
Not until their term, not until that second group's term ends.
You're gonna have staggered terms, and you're gonna have staggered compensation.
And then how do we do the president's compensation? Because that's 25% above. Which level is the 25% above? Yeah, I think it either needs to go back to charter and ordinance, or
If it,
try and shove it through the other way. I mean, I think we did our good job that we put the 2 years out initially because we were worried about that. You know, we're voting our own raises, but when there's that delayed kick in, regardless of who's in the seat, you know,
I think 2 years is a sufficient
yeah.
delay.
the concern, of course, is that if you want this on the November ballot, you have an August, I think it's an August 14th deadline. Is that right, Debbie?
Yes, but do we have to get their approval or just that they reviewed it? I thought the home rule said they just have to review it.
From my conversations with the AGs, I think they're looking for approval of this language. So you need to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
If it goes back, it may not end up on the November ballot.
So we need to approve it tonight or down the road?
Would have to be back at the AG's desk and back to us by August 14th. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, there would have to be approval by this board, and then from here it goes to the county clerk, as I understand it, and then it goes to the AG's office. So I'm imagining that your July meeting, that might still give you enough time to do that. Debbie would have a better sense of that than me, but I just want everyone to understand there is that time crunch.
Yeah. Well, I want to do the right thing and not just a quick thing either, too. So if it doesn't go on this ballot, it can obviously go on a different one. But
But it sounds to me as though the AG's office doesn't care if there are staggered terms and there's staggered compensation. They don't want anybody voting an increase that is not interceded by a re-election.
Right.
So.
Right. And I can certainly understand that, and I'm glad that they care about the locals and not the state and federal level that vote their own raises all the time. Sorry for the pun, Bob. But I don't like the staggered compensation idea. I would rather drop the whole thing and stay at $900 instead of having staggered compensations like that.
Well, there has to be some, other municipalities have resolutions that allow them to increase their pay on a township board or a city council or a village council.
I think almost everybody does except for us, at least locally around here.
And none of them have I've never heard of any board that has had a staggered compensation rate.
I've never seen that either.
I've never heard of that before in my life.
Yeah.
I'm no legal eagle, but
Me neither. For sure.
Nobody lists their compensation and says, "Oh, well, these 3 members get this, and those 3 members get this, and then in 2 years, these 3 members will be getting this." It just doesn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
So this seems
So I guess we would either have to
Unusual.
accept what this is or go back to the drawing board completely. So we may have to come up with some other language. I think that they're just worried about that specific language we submitted, right?
Or leave it alone, like it was.
Correct. That's the third option.
No
Yeah.
hard feelings.
No, I mean, I don't either, but I do think that $900 a year for this position is quite low, especially when you compare to other municipalities that may meet less and do less.
Well, without wedding ourselves to any deadline, I'd like to take another look at it and explore how you could have staggered terms but not have staggered compensation, which seems to me to be.
Yeah.
well. I don't see. First off, I don't see the issue of somebody sitting on a board, sitting on the council for 2 years before getting a raise. I don't.
Right.
I don't see the increase in the rate being an issue after a 2-year wait.
Right.
After passing a resolution. I mean, sure, there might be people on the board that voted for that raise that are going to get that raise, but it's still a super majority. It's still.
Yeah, we put in a bunch of
it's-
stopgaps, so that you
yeah,
can't
it's
just
not
start.
like we're just willy-nilly giving everybody a raise whenever they desire it.
I would almost suggest that we pull it, charter and ordinance, go back to it.
On
Tom, you
board.
can come to the charter and ordinance meeting, and we should have it before next council meeting, so that we could bring this back up to either kill it or have the amended one to go out as soon as, the first July meeting goes. All right, I make the motion that we pull this from the agenda tonight and reconvene a charter and ordinance meeting, which is Chris, Suzanne, myself, and then President McKinney can show to rediscuss the
Yeah,
potential ballot.
I think
measure.
we need to. I'll support that. We
Okay.
need to. We definitely need to revisit this. The whole idea of staggered compensation seems.
With the 4 of you
unorthodox.
there, would that be in violation of OMA?
No, it's a public meeting.
Okay.
Yep, charter and ordinance is a public meeting.
It's a standing committee.
Yeah.
There's a motion and support. Any further discussion?
None here.
I'd like, if we could, maybe the staff could explore and pull some compensation ordinances that address staggered terms.
And I will do so as well. If I know when your meeting is, I'll pull together some information. And I've had lots of conversations with the AG's office, the particular woman who is in charge of this. I'll continue to have those discussions so that she's aware of the unique
Okay.
situation here of the staggered terms.
Okay, great. And then if you're available to make that charter and ordinance meeting, then
Sure.
okay, perfect. All right.
There's motion and support. Hearing no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Also,
Yes.
Cruikshank,
Yes.
Heifel,
Yes.
Shield,
Yes.
Rankin,
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried. Public comment. Members of the public can address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public, we ask that you please state your name and address for the record. Sir?
Thank you. Hello, my name is Tim McClory. I'm a member of the public, but I don't live in your community. But I do represent you with the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority. If you remember 2 years ago when you voted to go with our company for your property, liability, and risk management services, I promised you a couple of things. I've been here before to deliver RAP checks, which are grant monies to help you guys avoid having losses, and I've delivered a couple of those here. Tonight, this represents your second renewal, and if you remember back then, I promised you as a member of the MMRMA, you guys are quasi-owners of the company, and we don't send dividend checks out to stockholders, we give money back to our members. Well, this year, our board declared a $29 million return to our membership, and an additional $1.5 million to state pool members, of which you are. So I have 2 checks here for you tonight. I love doing this, especially as this is your first go-around. Again, as members of the MMRMA, you guys are entitled to participate when monies are returned, because you guys are basically owners of the company, and you guys elect our board, and our board makes the decision. So, of that $29 million and $1.5 million, I have a check here for $2,472, and an additional check of $8,145. So I just wanted to make sure that I brought this out to you, so I won't want to take up any more of your time, but the Michigan Municipal Risk Management Authority appreciates your membership, and congratulations on your over $10,000, the first go around. As you go along, the biggest multiplier is how long you've been a member. So the longer you're a member, the more money you get back. So anyway,
Excellent.
I thank you. So
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Clark?
Jim Clark, 314 Hadley Street. I'd like to speak to you briefly about two issues. The first one is a resident of the village, Tim Stalka. Tim started working for the village in the mid-70s. He's been the director of the sewage treatment plant. He has computerized the plant. He has been the recipient of the only award for excellence in southeastern Michigan for sewage treatment plants. He has computerized the operation. He's served as a mentor to other people in similar capacities around the state because of his knowledge, expertise. And I would submit to you that to recognize his work and achievement over the years, that you consider renaming the sewage treatment plant in his honor. That's one issue. Second issue is is Holly Hills. Shortly before I moved to Holly, I know the township got into it with the developer there. They lost. It was kind of a messy thing, and we end up with that development as it is. And it's my understanding they're getting ready to expand it. I would submit to you that from an environmental perspective, it would be highly preferable to not have a separate sewage treatment plant out there, but to tie them into the village. That also would benefit village residents, since we have the capacity and have them paying for sewer and water here. And I know their systems have not always met the state standards for a variety of reasons, but I think environmentally and for the financial benefit of the residents of the village, I would like to see you look into the prospect of having them tie into our system. I sat on the council when the high school was built, and I know there's at the time there was a dedicated sewer and water line that went out to the high school that ran right by there. I don't know if that's still a dedicated line. Certainly from an engineering perspective, a number of things would have to happen, but I think it would be a win-win for the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Mr. Love?
John Love, 200 North Saginaw. I wanted to talk about two things also. This bracket was on a house that was scheduled to be demolished by the village. It's still there, and that's the kind of quality that makes Holly not a Fenton. Because Fentonized, they just tore everything down. We need to be protecting those items. And what I'm concerned about is this Waterworks Park project. I talked to, well, first off, I don't know what the plan is on this Waterworks as far as the village goes. We have the fire hall coming up, and to have it demolished, the cost of that demolition would be better spent on this fire hall project that we're doing. If you tear it down, it destabilizes the water retention system for the pond, because whatever soil you put on is not compacted and it's not insulated. It's part of that retention system. It's an historic project. It's in the historic district map here, and the historic district commission voted not to demolish this building. What would replace it is grass. It doesn't have any opportunity for anything. For the money that's in there, you'd have an asset by fixing it up. And I talked to Vince, who has the weddings. They would be able to, would like to use that facility for a wedding site. They have already booked up at using the Battle Alley. So it's a landmark project that's already there, and it creates an asset by improving it. And that's what Hoffman's been doing. It's a difficult job because the village decided to demolish it by neglect, which is also a violation of the village ordinance. So before you take any action to demolish this thing, it needs to be worked on to make it an asset, because grass isn't an improvement. So I'd like to make sure that you understand that, and this money situation could be used for a better need. I don't know what the plan is for the demolition. Is just put grass in, and there's talking about other things, but I haven't seen any plan, and whatever it is very vague. Just demolish it. That isn't a satisfactory plan in any event. So these are the considerations I'd like to see dealt with, because if you don't like the ordinance, change the ordinance, but the Historic Commission has said it shouldn't be demolished. So you need to respect that ordinance or change it. And you don't have that authority, and that letter of the action of the commission was delivered to the council earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Sue. I didn't recognize you back there. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, Sue Julian. We served together a long time. I live in Rose Township, 3505 Radley Lake Road. I'm here representing Headwaters Trails, which, as you know, is a volunteer organization, and we're doing what we can to assist local governments in terms of recreational possibilities. So I'm not sure if you're aware that Holly Township put in an application for funding to the MDNR passport plan to create the landing at Fish Lake Road, which would be the first stop along the Shiawassee River from Holly, and would mean that people wouldn't have to go all the way to Fenton or get out and get a ticket at Fish Lake Road, which some people do. So I want to talk to you today as quickly as I can in my 4 minutes, that I think that there's another opportunity built on that recreation passport plan, and that's the full trust fund grant. Now, because of the governor's emphasis on trails and also on water access, an application in this following year jointly by the village and the township, and including as many nonprofits and other groups as possible, I think would be very fundable. So I checked to see what kind of money and what kind of things could be funded. Mary Carlock, who is the grants administrator for this region, has been unable to come for this, but she will be here on July 13th, and I recommend anybody else come and listen to her. She will be meeting with Mr. Cullis. And this year, the trust fund has recommended $21,000 in grants to over 50 communities, and trails, improvement of parks, connection of communities, economic development, even bridges, restoration of infrastructure. All of those things can be found in what was recommended for this year's round. So I would suggest that, and this relates to the Waterworks building, with the an application, a joint application from the village and other communities is likely to be funded based on what's being funded this year. We will be hearing in a week or so from Ms. Carlock what she thinks would be, what kind of things she would pass on and recommend for funding. So I'll leave this with you, Mr. President, and if you want to pass it around to other people, show them the kinds of things that could be funded.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Sherilyn Everly.
I'm Sherilyn Everly. I live at 314 Hadley Street. As council members, I think that you guys have done a really good job of keeping two guiding principles in mind when you make decisions for our community. You try to find the community benefit, and you try to find a way to pay for it, which we also call sustainability. That's the information that you have asked from the people who want to save the Waterworks building. Show us what the community benefit will be and how that building will continue to pay for itself or be a benefit to this community. Well, a year ago, I served on the ad hoc committee that was called for by the Parks Commission with Mr. Rankin and Mr. Cruikshank. And we reviewed, first of all, I answered a Facebook, said, come, if you're interested, come. And so there was about 13 of us that came in, and we sat down, and the first things that we did was to review the historical significance of the Waterworks building. It has nothing to do with the mill that was the reason that Holly prospered. It is a building that was built in the late 20s to house a pump, a Leffel turbine, that pumped water into the water tower. That's its purpose. And so we also tried to contact state, county, different organizations for help with grants or some guidance or consultation, and nobody even returned our phone calls, or they passed us on to some other department that didn't return our phone calls. So we also spent time trying to answer the above question. If we save that building, what would be the community benefit and how would we pay for it? And as a group, we couldn't come up with that. So our recommendation to the Parks Commission, who also has jurisdiction over that building, besides the Historic District Commission, and we recommended to them that that building be demolished. They took the recommendation to you, council, and you agreed. It should be demolished. And for 6 months, we all pretty much operated, or 5 months, that it was going to be demolished until someone with an idea came and said, I want to do this. And if you want to vote on giving me more than 4 minutes now, you're welcome to do that.
Well, you're only halfway through, so go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I've read the minutes of the last meeting, and it's clear to me that the people who keep coming before you do not have a clear vision for what is the community benefit and how is it going to pay for itself. And I'm going to tell you, ice cream and hot dogs is not a community benefit. It's the kind of thing that could be delivered by a food truck or a food vendor and create an opportunity for a small business person in our community. But from the minutes, what I did hear and what I thought was really exciting is what Sue was talking about, which is the headwaters of the Shiawassee River Trail. Hot damn, what a reason for us to have a great park over there on that part of the river. A National Heritage Trail. There's a River Fest that's going on in Linden. I want to have the River Fest 2020 in that Mill Pond Park, in that Waterworks Park. Jim and I founded Headwaters Trail. We wrote the papers. We wrote the bylaws. We submitted everything. We have lived on that pond for over 30 years. We've kayaked. Jim owned a kayak 35 years ago. And I can tell you what kayakers don't need is an old building. That's not That's not how this money should be spent. If you've got access to $30,000, I would say compared to the cost of $200,000 just to make that building workable, 30 grand is a spit in the wind. But 30 grand could be a picnic tables with a pavilion over them. It could be actual flush toilets that maybe have the old bricks on the outside of them. There's a lot of things it could be. And Mr. Lopp, I'm going to get to your point about the outflow in a minute. But we could improve
Cheryl
that
Lynn,
part.
I hope you have that opportunity. It's 4 minutes. What's the pleasure of council?
I allow 4 minutes.
Another minute.
Support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Things I would spend $30,000 on, and I strongly support that the village join with the township in this endeavor, but not to save a freaking old building, but to make a park that's really workable. We could put in a handicap access for kayakers. Right now, you got to park in the parking lot and drag your kayak over the bridge. It's a nice input, but a lot more people could use it if we could access your cars right down to the waterfront. We could have a launch adjacent to parking. We could have bathrooms. We could have a covered picnic areas. Kayak lockers, you probably don't even know what those are. They're great big corrugated tubes, and when I come to Holly to park, to kayak, I'm going to stick my kayak in that locker, lock it up, then I'm going to take 2 cars out to Fish Lake Road, park one, come back, and my kayak is safe. And what else is going to happen is when I get done at Fish Lake Road, I'm going to come back to that same spot, and now I'm going to have dinner. Now I'm going to want to spend the night in the hotel. You don't even realize what a beautiful trip it is to go east, go through the mill pond and up the river the other direction. You can go all the way out to Radley Lake Road and never get out of your boat, never see houses. It's fantastic. We have got so much that we could offer weekend paddlers if we would just get on with making this park useful. I appreciate the work that's been done, and I really hope that if you choose to tear down the building and to fix the park, that we could build on some of these relationships. Again, working with Kettering, those kids don't go to Kettering to learn how to save old buildings. They go to Kettering to learn how to make energy and how to use resources and how to brainstorm and how to do things that people haven't even thought of. And if we could get rid of that building, those kids could take care of something that really is a problem for us, the dam that we talk about every year when we come here with our, our special assessment district. What if we turn those kids loose with a blank slate? They'd have the outflow from the dam, they've had the outflow from where the waterworks building used to be, and they could create something useful for us, something that was hydroelectric. Maybe it would be something like increasing the flow and being able to do a little crazy whitewater rafting or something. I don't know. But I think that the doors have been open, and we should use those opportunities to make that park be something that is a community benefit, that is sustainable, that will pay for itself. I was the director of the Crim Race up in Flint, and one of the smartest things I ever heard was when Bobby Crim said, "It's a long way from a good idea to implementation." And it takes people, perseverance, passion. The money will come when you have those things, but that's the way to get things accomplished. These folks have a good idea, and in 6 months, they still have a good idea. What I'd like them to do is refocus on what this community really could benefit from. So, as I say, you've already had recommendations from committees, commissions, your experts. My understanding is that the people you paid for to consult you have said, get that thing down, it's a liability. I'm glad Mr. Risk Management never visited the Waterworks building. He might not have been giving us 10 grand tonight. But please, make a decision to tear this thing down, put it behind us, and if you do that, I promise I will put all of this energy into making that the greatest park, and you would be so proud come Riverfest 2020 of what you've done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments? Seeing none, hearing none. Old business. Waterworks building update.
Good evening, everybody. First, I want to apologize because George Cullis couldn't be here tonight. His wife had surgery, and at 6 o'clock, she had not been released from the hospital yet. But at our last meeting, the discussion was around obtaining a permit, which I did. Once we get the permit, install a door, which we did yesterday, and we cleaned out the whole downstairs. And then present you with a budget, which I have done. Since then, since we've got the door on there, George got a hold of Ron Campbell because he needed access to the building to finalize the plans. I don't know what date they've set up for that because I really didn't have much chance to talk to George today because of the situation with his wife. But that's where we stand. And also, John Love mentioned that Vince from the Vault suggested that he'd be interested in using this venue for weddings, and he said he's behind our project 100%. So the next step is for us to go in there. What we need to do is replace the floor and the roof and the windows and seal the building up so it's safe from the weather. And that's what our plan is. And once we get it secure, then we can continue on and finalize our plans and present them to you. And I can't speak with the grant funding because that's really what George has been working on, and he has some more information on that. But again, he couldn't be here tonight.
Anything further?
No, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President,
Mr. Walker.
just as a reminder to council, council has a motion that was authorized for demolition of that structure. Unless council votes to extend an additional period of time, that motion would be in order and the building would move towards demolition.
So if we do nothing, demo continues.
Correct.
We actually have to have a motion to forestall again. Okay.
Correct.
Just quick adding up the totals here, we're talking about $69,360 just in the first top line. We haven't seen a check or commitment of funds. And they had another month from the last meeting that I was absent at last week. So 3 weeks later they got a permit and then the door was just installed yesterday. Last meeting, President McKinney made all of the right arguments, and I don't know what else to add on top of that. Every one of them was logical. There's no future for the building. There's no sustainability. Sherilyn just had some phenomenal suggestions on what we could do with the park. I think that's a phenomenal idea. Again, the point is to pull out the turbine and anything else we can save with the demo of the building to display that at a future date under a pavilion with some signage, that kind of thing. So there is a plan afterwards. Most of the individuals that were on that Waterworks committee said that they would like to be on the committee post-demo of envisioning what is, you know, what to be. Parks, I know, is salivating at looking at some ideas to do there. I'm not convinced this can't be saved. Or that this can be saved, I should say.
And Dave, I stopped by there today, put a nice door in.
8 months after we decided to demo it.
As you know, as government, nothing comes quick for free. And he's, as long as the village don't have to spend 1 penny, or the taxpayers, we're out absolutely nothing if
At
this
what
man
point
was
do we start owning the cost of the building, Bob? So we own the building now.
30 years it's been sitting like that, Dave.
$69,000 right now for the initial investment. There's no check that's being worded that says here's the 30 grand. We're starting work on it tomorrow.
But it costs the
And then
taxpayers
at what point-
$28,000 to tear it down. Will you use that money somewhere else?
No, we've approved up to $25,000.
Or 25 is still.
I believe the original quote was like around 18,000. The question and all that was, how dense is the concrete, and there would be additional tools that need to be taken for some of that down.
See, the buildings, something like that don't bother me because it didn't go anywhere for 30 years. You give another year, don't go anywhere. He's lost all the money. We don't put a penny in it.
And then we look like buffoons because we've already voted to demo the building last August.
I didn't. You did.
No, it was unanimous. Your name is on that vote. Can we have that callback
It's right
that
here.
says it was unanimous? Voting for Crookshank, Shield, Musgrave, Rankin, Alsop, and Perkins. Voting against, none. So you're on that bill too, Bob. You've already voted to demo.
I'm just saying, I think that it would look good if he got it done. He's had a lot of obstacles. I'm not sticking up for you either.
It has nothing to do with Bob.
He's
Has
had a
nothing
lot
to do
of
with
obstacles,
George.
Dave.
I see
And
a
I'm just
bad
saying,
idea, and I'm not voting for it.
a big empty home was gonna look no different than that.
For year one, it's going to look like that while committees are getting together what the envisioning process should be and submitting for grants that are coming along and gathering the ideas of what we should do.
And I talked to George today too. He said nothing comes fast, and he did get that barn moved. If he's willing to get everything done for free with this gentleman and make it nice, I'm for it, as long as none of the taxpayers have to put a dime in that place.
Okay, I
That's
say
the
so.
situation.
Excuse me, the sake of interrupting, just point of order. And I don't mind how the hearing goes or how the discussion goes, but I think we ought to have some ground rules. Is it going to be council discussion rebuttal, council discussion, or how exactly is this going to proceed?
Thank you, Mr. Gildner. I thought it was council discussion. So, thank you, Bob, but you've had your, I asked you for more.
I have more to
What-
respond to some of the
I
things.
know,
that-
but it's council discussion at this point. If anyone has, if a council member has a question for Mr. Hoffman, that's a different issue.
I have concern that a budget is more than what it will cost and what the breakdown of the items. It's also how are you going to finance what needs to be done? And I don't see that part of it. I see the outgo, but I don't see the income. So that's a concern that I have toward the budget. No, it's a concern.
Any further council comments?
Can I ask Mr. Hoffman a question?
We're permitted to do that, aren't we?
Sure.
Mr.
Through the
Hoffman?
chair, with the chair's permission.
You can ask Mr. Hoffman a question. And he
Mr.
can't
Hoffman?
answer it, but you can ask him a question.
I want to ask you a
I
question.
kid you, Bob.
You're talking all this money. Are you willing to put your own money on the line for this?
I have put more money into this already than the whole council combined. I have a vision for this, as a lot of people have a vision. And to suggest that the council made a decision 6 months or a year from now to tear it down doesn't mean you can't change your mind. If that were the case, where you can't rethink something, get more information and change your mind, we'd be in a sad state of affairs. You have the ability, you have the courage, and you have the responsibility as leaders to be able to change your mind when you get more information. You have a group of people who are willing. I will finance this.
I think you've gone beyond the question, Bob. And I don't think, you said you'd spend your money. You and I discussed this just a few minutes ago. If you were going to offer your money to the village, and I was representing the village, and I am, I would want a bulletproof agreement from Bob Hoffman. Because saying I've got the money and I've spent the money and I'll spend more money is not bankable. This budget is not bankable. I look at, on average, 2 business plans a month. This is not bankable. And I represent the owner of the property, and if you fail, in the unlikely event that you fail, the owner will have to pick up the tab.
You know what
and you will be back. You know, say, I need more time, I don't have the money. You know, it wouldn't be bad if you spent some of the village's money to help me finish the job. We're gonna be on that slippery slope and it's a danger right now. And it has been a danger. It's been a danger for 7 months after the village voted to demolish it. And I saw updates here. Well, I called so-and-so and he didn't call me back. You weren't moving in the direction of a bankable deal.
Okay, I've done everything you've asked me to do.
I didn't ask a question.
So don't I get to respond?
No. No, if there's a question of council, we'll permit a question of council. You didn't answer Mr. Alsop's question either.
I did or did not?
You did not.
Okay, I'll answer his question.
He asked if you were willing to put in money. You said you were willing to put in money.
Yeah,
but it's not money. It's the promise of money. It's not the bulletproof that I can go to my constituents and say, this is not going to fail because Bob has refinanced his house and given a second position on it to secure the payment of the improvements that are required. And I don't know what improvements are required. This is a left-hand column and a right-hand column with numbers on the right. I don't know what's required for the improvement. I know that there was an engineer's report that said the building was unsafe. I know that our building official looked at that report and he issued a list of what had to be done in an order that had to be done. I don't see that list here.
Okay. Yeah, the list is there because it lists what we need to do. Number two, the engineering report didn't.
Bob, I didn't ask you a question. Have a seat. If somebody else has a question, I'd be glad to have you answer the question, if you can.
But you bring up these topics and I can't respond to
I'm
them.
having a council conference right now. Any further comments or questions?
Just to jump on yours, like you said, the business plan. I've said that multiple times. If they're in front of a Shark Tank looking for investors, this does not get money. This plan, this layout does not secure funding for anybody to want to jump in and say, let's do it. I think we should definitely defer a lot of this towards the train depot, which is a habitable building that should be moved, and then putting it into the park itself. So if we take no action right now, demo continues unless somebody wants to make the action to
I
forestall further.
didn't see anything from the Historical Commission.
They technically do not have a say in it because the way the charter says, against what Mr. Love has already stated, it is not in a historical district, nor is it in a proposed historical district because we have not been presented with anything. It has been discussed about adding it into the historical district, but that discussion has been going on for 4 years.
I didn't think it was in the historic
It
district.
is not in the historical district.
Okay. So the structure itself is within the boundaries of the historic district, but recall that our ordinance is very specific in that it lists specific properties and addresses.
Correct.
And that specific building is not. So even though it's within the perimeter, it is not a historical property pursuant to our ordinance.
That was my understanding also.
And if we're going commission to commission, the Parks Department has requested demolition. Also, the committee, the Waterworks Committee has requested demo, and the council has authorized demo versus one historical commission requesting that we save it. If we're doing wait and wait.
I make a motion to give him more time on that building. I think it would be beautiful done. I think we should give him a chance. I did see progress to Isidore. And he said he put beams in it, but I couldn't get in it.
The next order of business would be support.
Support.
There's motion and support. To give him more time, is that?
What, are we just
Plenty
giving
of
an open
demolition time.
blank time now, so he has as long as he wants? What's the time
I
frame?
would say, have him bring a report in to us every 30 days.
Until when?
Till November 1st, and then it gets demolished. Give him
Ryan,
that
do you
kind
still
of
support
time.
that?
Huh?
Yes.
And that's being more fair to the village, to the historic people, John Love, and everybody else's work.
There's a
November 1st is D-Day.
Okay, there's a motion and support. Any further discussion? Till November 1 with monthly reports. And what if we don't like a monthly report? What if there's no action after 2 months?
Then we'll have another meeting between all of us and make a different decision if it's that bad. If I don't see no progress at all, and I'll go by there every week.
We said that back in November, and all we've seen is a door.
But for sure, November 1st,
Yesterday.
nothing's done.
Trying to clarify.
For real this time.
I'm trying to clarify the motion. So
Be different this time.
Would it be 30 days at a time, up to a
Yes,
maximum of
every
up to
30 days.
up to a maximum until November 1st?
If we see no roof, no progress.
Is
no
that your
rafters,
understanding, Ryan, of the motion?
Yes.
There's a motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Cruikshank.
Absolutely not.
Heupel.
No.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
No.
Yes.
McKinney,
No. Motion failed.
So we continue with demo.
Mr. Walker, as I understand it, as we stand now, we're going to proceed with the demolition then.
We will have to apply for the appropriate permits through the Water Resource Commission of Oakland County and also fulfill the requirements of the MDEQ. So
How long do we think on that?
Well, we've already had one permit through the Water Resource Commission which expired, which I believe that cost was $750.
Well, they charged us inspection fees, so we've got about $2,000, and they just suspended it. They will reenact it. I just have to call.
So we have about $2,000 into that. We just have to call and reenact that. So that should be a week to 10-day process, and then we already have gone through the bid process. So certainly within, just to be a lengthy 30 days, the process should begin, but I would assume that it would be shorter.
Okay.
Good time to switch gears and focus on the depot, which is a very, very ambitious project.
Can I ask a question?
There's public comment at the end. New business, consideration of the approval of resolution 2018-026 allowing alcoholic beverages in Lakeside Park on August 25, 2018. Mr. Walker?
Yes, so what you have before you is a council action request. It is from Moose Lodge 1168, which is our local Holly Moose Lodge. Each year they conduct an annual picnic. They desire to hold that picnic this year at Lakeside Park. Parks within the village are prohibited from having intoxicating beverage, and that's the way that it's worded in the ordinance. That's why I use that word. I believe their intent is to have beer and wine. Even though it is prohibited by ordinance, there is a provision in Title IX, Section 96.17, which reads as follows. No person shall have in his or her possession any intoxicating beverage in any park unless designated by resolution of the village council. So I have met with officials from the Moose Lodge. In fact, Mr. Bob Schultz is here with us tonight in case you would have any questions for him. But their intent is to have a picnic on August the 25th, 2018 from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. If permitted to do so, they will reserve and rent the large pavilion, fence off the area, appoint monitors to secure the area, and only members of the Moose Lodge or their specific guests will be allowed entrance into the area. And they would have to follow all other applicable Michigan Liquor Control Commission rules as well.
Juries have only for one day?
Only for one day and only for those specified hours, 2 to 8.
Has this been done in the past?
Not since I have been here.
Okay.
Yeah, I do not recall any specific event in my tenure at Parks that was that allowed alcohol, and we haven't made a resolution about.
Personally, I don't have an issue with it. I was just
I don't
curious what
either.
the precedent was. Yeah. So, I mean, it almost seems like I'm just thinking in the back of the head. We should update the ordinance anyway, because most state parks allow you alcohol anyway, as long as it's not in a glass container. Is there a reason that, other than just the ordinance, that we don't have alcohol in any of our parks? Period.
No, I think at one time, obviously, this was probably the direction from the Parks Commission at that time, and Village Council certainly is something that Charter and Ordinance or the Parks Commission could ask to be revisited.
Okay. Now, is this only coming forward because of a local business, or would, say, if somebody wanted to have any party, birthday parties or any kind of party there, and they can request that they have alcohol there?
And then it would require the same, yes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
it would require a resolution from us. So.
Gotcha. Okay. I make the motion that we pass the ordinance laxing for the day for the Holly Area Moose Lodge, number 1168, for August 28, 2018 for their party.
Support.
Motion, August 25, 2 to 8 p.m., right?
Oh, it says 28th on here on the memo.
25th.
Mine says 25.
Oh.
It says 28 on the first sheet and 25 on the
All right,
second.
so just for clarification, Mr. Schultz, it is the 25th, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Everything I
just
have
need to-
says 25th.
Well, at the top, under the subject line, it says August
Yeah,
28th.
the subject line says 28, and then on the following page
Oh.
it says 25.
Yeah, how are the resolution by our clerk extraordinaire is the correct date on
Is
it?
accurate, yes.
Okay.
Noted.
That's fine. For August 25th.
There's a motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Heupel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Item 2 under new business, consideration of the request to purchase backup influent pump.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to agree with the Clarks and Everly about Tim Stallcup and his dedication
I
and
think
Matt's a magician down there with the computer. I've been chasing a red bouncing ball for the last couple months as he shows me where everything's at. So I thought I had a little bit of computer skills, and he made it look very minimal. So
Having a sewage treatment plant named after you, except that it would enhance his stand-up routine, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he does make very light work of a very dark business. So, but the village wastewater plant is a 24/7 operation. It is currently run by a director and 3 operators due to the efficiency that Tim has put in place over the years. But unfortunately, we still, because Holly is built on a swamp, have a water issue when it rains. We have infiltration into the system. We have a 2.5 million gallon capacity at the plant. Sometimes we get close to that, if not exceed it, when we have this issue. So all the pumps that are bringing that stuff in through the treatment process are screaming. So we were able to come across an opportunity. One of our regular vendors refurbished a pump from another community, offered it to us for about $7,500. And if some of you recall, I believe about a year or 2 ago, Tim asked for 2 new impellers for the current pumps down there, and they were like 20 grand for both those pumps. So all we can get a whole pump as a backup during these high water events for about $7,500. So that's our recommendation, is to buy this pump from Root Mechanical and have it as a backup, because one of these pumps clog. It's easier to set a new one on and get that screaming than it is to try to unplug it when you've got millions of gallons of water coming at you. So, is there any questions or?
No,
I mean,
it's a no-brainer.
This would not require a budget amendment.
No, it's
correct?
going to come out of the
already
new
approved.
fiscal year, so there's money in there and parts and service.
Sooner
so,
the better.
Yes.
I'll make a motion. We purchase a spare influent pump from Root Mechanical, not exceeding $7,500.
Support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
Heupel.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion carried. Consideration of appointment of Stephen R. McGee as Village of Holly Fire Chief and authorizing the village manager to execute an employment contract.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is something that we've been talking about for several months as we talk about the evolution of the fire department, moving their building, but also with Steve McGee retiring from Groveland Township, that terminated our administrative agreement that we had with Groveland to provide administration to our department, when in fact Steve McGee, when he was the Groveland Fire Chief, he was our administration anyway. So we have the opportunity to hire him full-time. That is what we discussed through the entire budget process. That money has been budgeted and approved by council if this employment agreement is approved. Basically, I talked with members of the Finance Committee tonight. We had posted for the meeting tonight. Pro Tem Musgrave was not able to be with us, but I talked with Councilor Rankin and Heupel, and basically the salary for the position is proposed to be $72,000, and then with the benefit package as listed in that one-page employment agreement that you have in front of you. The total package, including all fringes, is just under $100,000. So to obtain the expertise of Chief McGee, for not only the salary but the entire benefit package. I think we're very fortunate. Area fire chiefs, I did a quick survey. The NACFA fire chief, the Groveland fire chief, their salaries are set at just over $98,000 annually. The Springfield Township fire chief, his salary is set at just over 97. So 77. So 78 and 77. With this salary at $72,000 as I proposed, I have it divided equally between the building department and the fire department, as Chief McGee, as our building official, will be responsible for the operation of both of those departments. And so I have this contract in front of you. I ask for your authorization for me to enable the contract.
Well, we have to address this again in 6 months, since there's the probationary status for 6 months pursuant to section 6.1 of the personnel manual.
No,
will that just overturn if there's no?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha.
I'll make the motion that we approve the contract for Chief McGee as presented.
Support.
There's a motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
Heupel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried. Item 4, under new business, consideration of the approval of resolution 2018-25, amending the 2017-2018 budget. Mr. Walker?
Actually, it will again be clerk extraordinaire.
Oh, I'm sorry, clerk extraordinaire.
You have before you my year-end budget amendments. As you can see, every fund actually is in a small surplus. The only one that is not is Holly Area Transportation. That's our SMART bus. And that is usually in a deficit almost every year, only because SMART dictates what we can charge, what we can get in as community revenues. Sometimes we go a little over because we schedule a little outside when people need it. But they do have a fund balance to cover it.
This is just tying up the budget, taking
Correct.
the surplus and
Closing
bringing it
out
over.
last year,
Gotcha.
taking the surplus, putting it into fund balance.
Make the motion that we approve resolution 2018-025, amending the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget.
Support.
Motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Alsop.
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
Heupel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried. Item 5, under new business, consideration of the special assessment district for stormwater drainage North Saginaw Street. Mr. Walker?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. You have in your packet a resolution from June the 13th, 2017. That resolution would be 2017-022. That resolution authorized staff to work together with our consultants to put together costs for a special assessment district for the properties located along North Saginaw. Specifically, those addresses would be 414 North Saginaw, which is the future site of the Village of Holly Fire Department, 422 North Saginaw, which is the Dollar Tree. There is a vacant lot right next door to the Dollar Tree and in between the former auto dealership, which is owned by Mr. Iatona. And then the last address would be 502 North Saginaw Street, which is the former auto dealership and is owned by the Iatonas also. As we work together with Rowe Professional Services, the engineers for the village, to put together this special assessment district, they completed all the surveying that was necessary. They completed all the engineering specs that were necessary, as well as releasing bids so they could get a cost as to establish the actual cost to put in the special assessment district in order to handle stormwater drainage from that site. If you remember, and for those that weren't at those meetings, this became necessary because of the pending development along that section of North Saginaw. The current stormwater management system, which is in place, which runs under North Saginaw Street, is not sufficient to handle additional stormwater runoff. In fact, during heavy rain periods, it's not uncommon to see backup from the system up through the stormwater grates and onto Elm Street and onto North Saginaw. So it's absolutely necessary that this happens. In putting together this system, the engineers and working with staff, we actually developed the entrance into the stormwater system on the southerly side, on the corner of the property of the fire department and Dollar Tree. So it's on that side. So that saved us from having to run that 100 feet all the way across the property in an effort to minimize the cost as much as possible. And so this stormwater system has been estimated by the engineers. The other thing that I asked the engineers to do, and I did mention this in a previous meeting, and it was discussion of council, actually it emanated from council, was that the village may bore an extra percentage of the cost in order to help spur development and to move the project along and trying to reduce the burden a bit on those individual property owners. So in the estimate that you have in front of you, I asked the engineer to give me a cost with the village assuming 20% of the total project cost, and then that remaining 80% of the cost of the project would then be split between the property owners, the village being one of those, pursuant to the linear foot of frontage that each property has along North Saginaw. So if you look on page 2, you can see those percentages. So 414 North Saginaw Street, that is the village. We have our 20% cost of the project, which is $25,276.40. Our linear footage along North Saginaw then gives us another 17.25% of the project for an additional cost of $21,807.09. Going right down the line then, 422 North Saginaw Street, which is Dollar Tree, they would have 24.31% of the project, a total cost of $30,728.17. The vacant lot right next door to Dollar Tree would be 13.73% of the project at a cost of $17,346.55. And the last piece of the project would be 502 North Saginaw Street, which is the former dealership, 24.71% of the project at a cost of $31,223.79. So at this time, those are the costs. If we're able to obtain easements from the property owners. So we know the village is not a problem. We have had previous discussions with Dollar Tree. That is not an issue, as it's subject actually to their site plan approval with the Planning Commission and final approval by council. And then Mr. Iatona then is still considering whether we receive easement through his property. And I say that just so that you know where we're at. If for some reason we do not get easements through all 4 pieces of property, then we would simply go out into the rail right-of-way, CSX rail right-of-way, and complete the project through there. The issue with completing it through there, one, is it's a time delay because it's a big company and there are lots of steps to go through, and number 2, it would require utilizing 2 additional structures plus the extra linear feet of pipe that would have to be laid. And so the engineer estimated that cost of being between $15,000 and $25,000 in order to go through the rail. That cost then would be split between the 4 property owners again. So what I'm asking for tonight is council to authorize this special assessment district as I've laid out, and with the proviso that if for some reason we have to go in CSX, that we will have that additional cost.
Jerry?
I have a question.
Remember when we built it, when they built the Dollar Tree? Remember they come in front of us here, the lady, and she wanted us to pay for that easement. She didn't have the money to pay to hook up to the back of that. Remember that? And she wanted the village to pay or loan her the money. Remember that? That was back a long time ago.
Well, so there was discussion with Dollar Tree when they were going through their approval process, and the decision of council was at the time that when the special assessment district, if it were approved, that there would be a 7-year payback period that could be utilized by the property owners, and Dollar Tree was required to hook up to that system underneath North Saginaw in order to get rid of the water until a new system is done. But they also built into their system where they would disconnect from the Saginaw output and connect to the new output to the rear of the properties.
And then what's it gonna cost the village totally? Not their half, but our percentage. What do you think it's gonna cost total?
Well, so it's 21,807 and 25,276, so it's going to be just below $50,000.
Remember, we were talking $100,000 back last year. Remember that?
Well, so we think, yeah, so we think we got some very favorable bids. In fact, the low bidder on this project, I mean, if we do not act now and we have to go back out later, they will require new bids.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not going to double, but certainly I think it would be increased.
Yeah, remember how expensive that was gonna be, and everybody voted against it? It was too much money.
Well,
I don't think
no.
we did anything. We
Yeah.
never took a vote on it.
Yeah, no, in fact, council on June 13th, 2017 authorized staff to move forward, and that was just one descending vote.
And that was to determine the actual project costs.
That was,
that
you're
time.
exactly
Yeah.
right, yes.
Yeah.
I have a question about the Iotona property. It's for sale at this time. If there is a sale, does that affect these numbers or the
No, because the cost
consent?
goes with the property,
Okay.
and so it would be whoever was owner of the property at the time the project took place. In fact, Mr. Iotona is in the audience tonight, I think just to hear what we're talking about, so council knows.
Okay.
If Mr. Iotona decides to take the 7-year payback plan, does that payback plan also transfer with the property?
Yeah, that would be a contractual matter between him and the seller.
He and the buyer.
Oh, buyer.
Mr. Walker, every community has to have a stormwater management plan by law, and that's what compels the village to have a special assessment district, isn't it?
Yes, and I think some of the discussion of council was at the time was our system that was in place before any development takes place, while it was maxed out, it was sufficient. But certainly with the addition and the development of these properties, the village fire department being one of them, when you replace that dirt lot with a paved lot,
Yes,
you're going to increase the drainage dramatically.
Yeah, the runoff will definitely increase.
Where's this new drainage gonna go, to Bush Lake?
Yeah, that is exactly right. So the interceptor, the connector, is is on the Dollar General property, but of course they're not benefiting from this project. So we will connect on their property, and as part of the project cost, we will restore whatever part of the parking lot we disrupt.
And my point was just that there's state mandate for
There is.
stormwater management, and I think it arises from a lot of the flooded basins they had in some of the older communities. And so that doesn't happen again, so that we learn something from that history, they mandated that you have this plan and you pay for it.
Yes, it is a requirement.
Mr. President, if I can just speak to the procedure here a little bit. There are some procedural steps that need to happen before this can be finalized. Looking back here, it was a year ago that the initial step was taken. So I know Mr. Walker was asking that you approve this. I think as far as we can go today is just indicating that you are authorizing the village to take the next necessary step in that process. And I can work with the administrative staff to make sure that's in place for your next meeting.
Thank you.
I guess I'll make the motion to authorize village administration to continue on with the special assessment district for the stormwater drainage on North Saginaw Street.
Support.
There's a motion support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
Heifel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alpha.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes. Motion carried. Public comment. Members of the public can address council once recognized by the chairperson. Comments are limited to a maximum of 4 minutes. Council may extend this time by up to an additional 4 minutes by a majority vote. Prior to addressing council, members of the public, we ask that you please state your name for the record. Any public comments? Cheryl Lynn Everly.
Thank you for moving this off a dead center. I have a question. It's probably better directed at staff. Can I assume that henceforth, from this moment on, only employees and contractors of the village will be going in and out of the Waterworks building?
Only those persons with authorization from the village. If there are any tools or property of the private individuals, then they will be allowed to.
Okay,
gain
when
those.
I'm looking out there with my binoculars, and who do I call?
Right, Chief Story.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Cheryl Lynn. Any further public comment? Mr. Love.
I don't want to belabor this, but thank you to Alsop and Seal for their vote. It's unfortunate that we're going to have to change the name of the Waterworks Park to Grass Park, but we're going to be moving ahead, and we'll have our nice porta-john out there. It's going to be really super. This is going to be a big draw to the community. Also, in furthering this, there is an opportunity really to launch kayaks from the Fine Arboretum. And you can pull your car up there and put it in the river. The only problem is there's 3 trees across the river down by the park. But we're not working on the park. With $25,000 that you could spend, you could fix this up and make this an even greater asset. But this grass project is a great priority for the council. It's very short-sighted. I came to this town and enjoyed the historic buildings and saved some of them. And it's sad to see this happen because that's not what Holly is. It's not going to be another Troy. So that's what the way you're headed. Moving on, the car wash. It took them 2.5 years to demolish the car wash after the village took it over. I don't understand why it took a year and a half rather to demolish it. There's no for sale sign down there, and that money could be gained and spent on the fire hall. I don't know what the budget is on that. So those are 2 things that you're overlooking in this, but you're going to move ahead on demolishing something. That's a great achievement for the village, and it doesn't reflect on the idea of preserving the historic assets here.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Any further public comments? Hearing none, seeing none. Council, or reports, excuse me, village manager?
Thank you. You have my written report that is in your packet. The only thing in addition that I would add is we just received just today the environmental report from the soil at the car wash. As you remember during previous meeting, we talked about there was a small area where they had suspected there may be some surface contamination. Upon testing and review, there is no contamination on the property. We have received the clearance from them to move ahead. All we're waiting on simply is the appraisal of the property. We expected to have it this week. We have not received it yet. We will follow up with the appraiser. That's all.
Thank you. Mr. Gildner.
I have nothing in particular. I've worked the last month just miscellaneous phone calls and matters with either Debbie or Jerry. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Gildner. Ms. Bigger.
I would like to let council know that per Attorney Gildner, you can make a motion to move the closed session to the next meeting in July.
Okay.
First meeting in July. As long as you make a motion and vote on it, it doesn't violate the charter.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr. Gildner.
My understanding is there's no objection from either of them, so all involved would agree to that, and there's no problem with that.
Thank you. Council comments. Ms. Cruikshank?
I'm glad we're finally done with the waterworks discussion. I do want to say that Holly Hill's idea about hooking up to the sewer water or presenting it to them, I don't know if anything's been done on the village side. Maybe it has, but I think it's a great idea.
So we've already had discussions with Supervisor Cullis regarding that issue. And so I think it will have to be driven from the residents, the developer, and the township to us. We have made him aware that the village does in fact have capacity.
We're not able to approach them. We have to kind of just sit on the sidelines. I mean, what's
Well, I think we've done that already, in that we've had that discussion that said we have capacity if you wish to move this direction. I mean, we have not written a formal proposal, but I don't think that would go to the township at this point. It would go to the developer.
Yeah, I mean that's what we're looking for, right? I mean the pipe's already going through there. Is there a 425 that's needed? Is that what we're saying?
No, there's not a 425 that's needed at all.
Okay.
There would be some improvements to the system that is there. I mean, there is a 12-inch main that runs out to the school. However, to add that volume of houses, I mean, there would be some additional improvements to the system that would be required. If so, that would be borne by the developer.
So what action could we suggest to do, like a formal olive branch to that, instead of just saying, oh, we have the capacity, and you know, it just makes sense to kind of try and pursue it a little bit harder than just a letting them know we have the capacity kind of idea.
Certainly. I mean, so as staff, we certainly do not need a motion to do that. I mean, if that's the consensus of council, then we will try and open up some discussion. However, I mean, in the end, it's totally their decision.
Right. No, of course, yeah. But you know, making the incentive for them to do that, because
sure.
You know, it obviously helps us. It will help them because it's less development that they have to build and that kind of thing. So,
sure. We'll make some attempts. Like I said, I mean, we initiated the discussion, you know, on a just a first step basis. But certainly, we can pursue it a little further. We will report back to council at subsequent meetings.
Okay. That's all I have.
Ms. Heupel.
I like the idea of naming the treatment plan after Mr. Stalkup, and I'd like to pursue how to formally make that happen.
All right.
Okay. And I also had just a report on the Carl Richter Community Center last meeting that we had. The numbers are now presented, and there were, as a breakdown, 4,717 paying visitors and 1,188 non-paying visitors, for a total of 5,905 total visitors to the community center in the month of May. So, yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Shield?
As for reports, I have nothing. In council comments, I have nothing.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin?
I just want to point out that it was a very difficult decision to decide to vote no and move forward with the demolition of the Waterworks building. As you know, I've changed my mind when we had some new information. First, I was for the demolition, and then with the new information, I decided to try and allow the group of George and Bob Hoffman to address our concerns and come up with a plan for it. And I am just at the point where I can't see myself allowing any further dragging of our feet on this issue. We've been dragging for 30 years, so I just want everyone to know that it wasn't an easy decision for me tonight. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin. Mr. Olson?
Well, I want to let everybody know that the car show's going on 4th of July weekend. I mean, Wednesday, 4th of July.
All right.
And none of the townspeople want to stay open to feed us, so we got the VFW or the Legion Hall is going to sponsor food and everything for the people.
All right. Right on.
Same time from 4 to 8 o'clock.
And then right from there, they can go over to Lakeside and watch the fireworks.
Yeah.
Right.
Perfect.
And another thing, I hate to see that old girl be tore down, Dave. No discrimination with you. If he would have come up with the money, I like to have seen it fixed.
I wouldn't say that I enjoy tearing down a building. That is absolutely not my stance, and I'm not saying you're suggesting that either. But dragging of the feet, if there was a lot of zeal behind it, 6 months they could have got a lot done.
Yeah.
A lot of forward progress.
Yeah. We did the best we could do on it. Hey, John?
So,
I like to have that door that they put in there. That's pretty nice.
brand new door. Only been used 3 times.
Anything further, Bob?
No, I'm good.
I would like to make the motion that we move item number 6 to closed session to the next meeting. I left my paperwork on my PC at work.
Second that.
And
Slapped my hand.
I was beyond pokey with getting the reports assembled, so mea culpa.
Is that a support?
Yeah, that's a support. It's Latin for support. There's a motion and support. Roll call vote.
Heickel.
Yes.
Shield.
Yes.
Rankin.
Yes.
Alsop.
Yes.
Cruikshank.
Yes.
McKinney.
Yes, motion carried. Just a final comment. I appreciate everyone's respectfulness in this discussion. It's very hard, and as Chris said, it was a difficult decision. As Dave said, you don't want to vote to tear down the building. And I've been involved in litigation where the judge he just refused to tear down the building. They don't like to tear down improvements. Nobody does. But I just appreciate the professionalism with which council approached this. Hearing no further comments, we're adjourned.
Can I have that?
So we are waiting.
Good to see you.
Only one, Chris.
Party at your house? The party at your house, Sherilyn?
Is it?
Night, Tom.
Good night, Bob.
Hate to see them.
Yeah.
Night with the Ronald tonight.
What, naming the wastewater treatment plant after someone, isn't that like a backhanded compliment?
That's what I think. You did.